So do you have summaries of your articles? Because those were way too long.
Yeah, I got a very abridged, shortened version.
Okay, good.
Hello.
Hello. Do you have the...
She's got it.
Got it.
Okay. Do that.
Because I was going to talk about that. That's how I was going to make that one paper for it, like the one article. Let me know when we can go on and when we finally get the piece of it.
Yeah, I will talk more on that. On that conference call. Of course, there. Yeah.
I think there's a lot of ways that I was marked. You happen to have dry erase markers?
Oh, I saw she has.
Do you have a dry erase marker?
Do
you have a dry erase marker?
Maybe.
Does anyone have a marker?
I have. Yeah, I use them for work, so sometimes I have them.
Thank you.
All right. Is Kayla going to be here? Samantha, is Kayla
I
going to
didn't
be
think
here?
it was going to be about fish when I looked at the thing. I saw copyright, and I was like,
Do you think so?
Oh my goodness gracious.
Are you going to go be here? No.
Woodpeckers. Peckers. Oh, I had to remember what we talked about the woodpeckers was going to be.
What should we say?
Okay, it's my jacket.
All right.
Ready, Laura? Alrighty. Now, we did chapter 25. It was talking about saving species. And it talked about three in particular, one like heavily. And there was the codfish, the blue whale, and the bison. Can anybody tell me what these three species had in common? Be broad.
Well, for one, there was a lot of them at one time. They were abundant, and now they're very rare to see.
Wow.
Well,
We hunted them to near extinction.
There, these species all are alike because they were hunted to the brink of extinction by people. Okay. Can anybody tell me what this is? I'm serious. It's a codfish. Yeah, North Atlantic codfish to be specific. And when it's talking about the fisheries themselves are areas where fish and other like aquatic critters are harvested commercially for us to consume. And codfish once were very plentiful. The book described them to the extent where you could basically walk across the ocean on their backs. There were so many of them. And the biggest cod fishery there was in the northwestern Atlantic. And then, what?
Very large. Yeah, they would catch the fish with like an average weight of 200 pounds.
Yeah, so they not only was they mini fish, but they was great big fish. And but the fishing started getting much harder to do. The number of fish being caught dropped off. They were smaller size. They're like worse quality. I mean, it just kind of went.
Yeah, from 1970, when the fisheries were so abundant, to 2000, the fish went down from like an average of 200 pounds down to like 20. So the average fish you would catch was much, much smaller. And the whole catch rate overall went down 75%. So fishermen were catching 75% less fish like every time they went out.
Let me see if I can make this work. I found a little video that kind of sums it up in a nutshell, this whole situation. Wait a minute. What's this thing? How do you make this thing work? What is all this?
Yeah, that's good, that's good.
There we go.
It sounds like the stuff of legends, but to veteran fishermen off New England's coast, it was the real deal. Codfish so plentiful that it served as the cornerstone of the region's economy. Today, however, New England fishing is nothing like it was even 30 years ago. Older fishermen say those were the days when fat cod seemed to fill the ocean.
All you had to have was a boat, and you could follow anybody you wanted and set around them and catch fish. It was that simple. I would go out here 25 miles and come in with 5,000 pounds of fish every day.
Every fish, you could barely roll them over with your wrist. Barely roll them over the cotton. They were so big. They was these, I mean, average 35 to 40 pounds, every fish. It's the most fantastic fishery, the most fantastic thing I ever saw.
Old salts do like to tell stories, but these are not exaggerations.
If you didn't see any cod down there, you would throw the line out to one side and just keep bringing it back, and the whole school would come back to you. That's how thick they were.
But by the 1980s, the fleets had grown bigger and much more powerful, with added technologies like side scan sonars, GPS systems, and fish finders. Scientists and fishermen had begun to notice that individual cod were getting smaller and that cod populations were shrinking and disappearing from inshore areas.
We did overfish, and that's where they went. Then the fish couldn't stand up to the technology. It made.
Okay. So like they said, I mean, it's just they was going good, and then it just kind of dropped off. They were basically getting hunted out. And wait a minute, let me get off of this thing. See if I can figure out how to get off this thing.
Yeah, so the problem we're looking at is it's not just this one fishery. Like, this is a great example, but fisheries all around the world are declining. Like,
Yeah.
from the 1970s, there's been like a 30% collapse of like all fisheries, like seeing trends like this. And my stepdad is actually a commercial fisherman, like down on the Pamlico Sound, and he's been fishing since he was like 12 years old. Like, he has his own boat and nets and everything, and he's experienced this personally. Because like when he was in his 20s and everything, you could go out fishing, there were people and boats like all over the Sound, and he could bring in like, well, he kept them in crates. He could bring in like crates and crates of fish and make like a really good living. But now you can go out there and catch like almost nothing, like day to day, because like they're experiencing this like on the East Coast.
Okay, and like she was talking about, the nearly 30% of the world's fisheries have gone downhill since the 1950s, and why it's agreed kind of among the public that the main cause for fishery collapse is a failure of like management, and by management I mean let me get my notes here. The maximum economic benefit with long-term survival. That's terrible writing, but okay then. Of the stocks in the ocean. See, these two kind of like the supply and demand curve. You got one, the maximum benefit, I do believe, would be down here, or be up here, and the stock would be here. These two things have to meet somewhere and they have to have a balance. If there's no balance, you're going to be slack somewhere. And unfortunately, in this case, the slack was picked up by the stock because the stock has gone down because there's no sort of long-term management to keep basically the species alive. But one could argue is like, well, if we have this problem with this, why in the world don't we have problems like managing wheat and stuff like this? And I'll tell you why. It's the government's method of classifying how a fish is so-called owned is, in order to own the fish, you have to catch the fish. And when you catch the fish, more than likely, you kill it. So therefore, it can't get any bigger and you can't reproduce. And any more fish that you would have got off of that fish basically is a moot point. And the incentives and because of this classification of how a fish is owned, the incentive is for fishermen, well, instead of thinking in the sense of, this is where the article about the social benefits and all that come into play. See, you got your, what did I do with my marker? Okay, you got your benefits over here. And your cost over here. Can somebody give me a couple of examples of how, about some benefits and some costs it would be to either keep the fish alive and wait, or to go ahead and get them, either way.
Like from the perspective of the fisherman.
Short term
or long term?
Either way, just kind of brainstorm. What are some benefits to doing it now, or versus waiting, or waiting versus doing it now, and some cost to that?
Well, instant gratification, I mean, if they go ahead and kill it, they're going to be able to get paid for it now. So,
Okay, so
money.
a benefit to now would be you get your moolahs now.
Yeah.
Revenue. Yeah, revenue. Yeah, revenue. Okay.
If you do not kill it, then you're doing two things with that. You can get more money off of fish whenever it reproduces because you'll have more fish to sell, and you're saving the species by not going out and killing more fish from the wild. You're letting it reproduce then.
Okay. So to sum all that up, stock management. It'll be better stock management to wait on some fish versus going ahead and killing them. Okay, go ahead.
And also, if you wait and harvest the fish, they're going to be bigger, and that's how when you take your fish to market and they're weighed, that's what you get back. And so, I mean, you want the bigger fish. If you have as many big fish as possible, that's definitely an incentive to hold on and wait.
Okay. You have something to add?
Yeah. If you wait to get the fish, wait until they're bigger or reproduce. Somebody could get them before you get them.
That's a cost to waiting.
Yeah, that's actually the biggest problem we have with the system. And actually the whole problem brings in this idea of tragedy of the commons, which is an economic concept. Because when you have a common area with resources that technically belong to no one, it's like, I have to get it before someone else gets it. So even though you know that if you cut these resources short, they're going to go away forever, you want to get them now before someone else does.
Okay, you go ahead. You ain't going to add anything there? Okay, so there's no sense of own, so to speak. The fish belongs to everybody, so anybody and their brother could get them. And basically, like she said, the biggest idea about this whole thing is, well, if I don't catch this fish now, who's to say who's going to get this fish later? Number one, and number two, any fish that comes off of this fish, who's going to get that fish? Because there's no guarantee that you're going to see any direct benefit from saving this fish, so you might as well get it while it's in front of you. That's the kind of idea.
Yeah, it's like if I don't, someone else will.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
I think because of that, you see a lot of private companies that just they harvest them, but they don't kill them, and then they grow them in there with their private property that they own. So you'll see a lot of transferring, which is still taking away from the tragedy of the commons because it's not public land anymore. But they harvest and they wait till it gets bigger, and then they have their own little population.
Yeah, that's
That was the
saddest
other
thing
point.
about the tragedy of the commons, because it's a good system if everyone follows it, but the problem is if they don't.
I'm going to say something. Remember a few classes ago we played a game? And that's the only game we played in the class. And I give each one of you 2 credits. I ask you to split that 2 credits into 2 parts. And 1 credit you keep to yourself, the other credit you donate to your group. And the credit you donate to the group appreciated by 20%. You guys remember that game? Okay, so what did you conclude from that game? And compare that conclusion with this scenario here. Go ahead.
They're one and the same really, because whenever you leave something to the public and let it appreciate in value, then everyone will get more. Whereas if you keep it to yourself, you will reap the benefits of it, but it will hurt you in the long run because there won't be, in the end, there won't be anyone to put things back into the public for it to appreciate.
And we also learned that like if you're the person that keeps all of your 2 credits, or you keep all the fish, but your other group they split it up and they donate, you benefit from something that you really weren't a part of, but you still have the benefit, and you're gonna have the most because you kept your 2, and then you're gonna get whatever the whole group produces. So with that being said, it's kind of like with the fish. If if you're keeping yours, you know what you're gonna sell. You know how much money you're gonna make. And if you wait, and if you trust the tragedy of the commons, the whole public, then you don't know what you're making. You would hope that everyone else would do the same thing as you're doing, but they don't. So it's like kind of, because you had us in groups that we didn't really know all of our members, so you don't know everyone's objective. And so, all fishermen have the same objective to make money, and but in what ways? And so that's kind of what we did. Unless you know the people that you're going against, you don't know what's happening.
That's right. So at equilibrium, what should we expect? Without intervention from the third party. I think I mentioned about the equilibrium in that game. What is equilibrium?
Everyone would put in and take out an equal amount.
Everybody will keep every bit of credit to themselves. That's equilibrium. Because everybody, is expected to just maximize their own benefit, right? So then the outcome is everybody is worse off compared to if everybody donate, right? Okay, so the same situation here, and the fishermen will not, wait for the other fishermen to catch all the fish, so they will do it. So that's what happened, and the fishery collapsed. Okay.
Okay, so the system we have in this country right now is called command and control. Like you take the fish and they are now yours, so you have to catch them to take ownership over them. And the way that the government tries to keep this in check is number of fishers, the boat size, the type of gear you use, and how long the season is, and there are all kinds of controls, especially for number and size of fish. But the problem you get here is how difficult it is to enforce.
Yeah.
Because you have a huge sound, you have so many boats, and you only have a few I forget what they're called, but police officers for the ocean. People come by in boats and patrol.
Game control. A game
One
board.
of those. There's some kind of marshal. I don't remember what they're called, but I've been with my stepdaughter's boat when they come and stop you, and even when they do, they'll check what you have, and if you have a fish that's too small, they'll give you a fine. But they can't catch you even 90% of the time. So a lot of fishermen, large scale or small, are getting away with this over and over and over because there's such a huge chance you're just not going to get caught if you're fishing out of season or your boat's the wrong size. There are so few people who are going to notice or check. So while it looks good on paper, like, the system isn't really, like, monitoring itself.
It was all, when it was made, I'm totally ripping off Harry Potter when I say this, but it's all for the greater good of the thing when they put this system in place. But it ended up, it just an epic fail. And when it come down to it, like she was talking about, because it's so difficult to enforce, there was too many fish that got fished out, which caused a severe population decrease. And then then there was a lobby for government to be more lenient, which, well, if it was hard to enforce to begin with, then really you can kind of say they were already being sort of lenient anyway, but they were more lenient, and that added to the destruction and made it even worse. And there was an article about the woodpeckers in the environment, and I kind of can relate that situation back to this, because what happened in the article, to kind of sum it up, was the government, this particular type of woodpecker was, and then like an incredibly, like it was a rare woodpecker. It was like a red something another woodpecker, but regardless, it was a rare woodpecker, and that became the environment people came in and made an act, the environmental something another act. The
environmental protection.
ECA, I want to say it is. Yeah. They came in, and this basically stated, well, you don't have to directly kill the creature yourself in order to be breaking the law now when it comes to the critter's health. If you destroy its habitat, you might as well be shooting the creature too, because if it ain't got nowhere to live, then it can't survive. And what they did was they put up what?
Endangered species.
Yeah, that's it. That's what I was trying to think of. It wouldn't come to me. But what they did was they put in all these rules and regulations, which caused a thing called preemptive And that basically means people started jumping the gun when it comes, like the foresters and all started jumping the gun when it comes to cutting down the timber. Because if, say they did run an experiment on this, and in the end they found out anywhere they put these so-called, like these private property acts and stuff when it comes to relating to the woodpecker, anywhere that they had these situations, there was a lot of the times the timber people actually end up prematurely cutting down that forest, so the wood wasn't ready yet, but they cut it down anyway, because I reckon their ideas was, well, if we don't go ahead and cut it down now, if this woodpecker comes in and the EPA crawls all over me, I can't do anything with it anyway, so I might as well go ahead and get my benefit now, even though I wouldn't be as great a benefit as if I wait and a woodpecker comes. So they start, instead of leaving some, like normal, the act would have made it where they would have had to keep some trees, and it'd been really expensive to try to keep all that straight, so they started clear cutting the whole area. And that was all because of the government trying to set up something kind of like this. They was doing the right thing, and they tried to set up a system to try to keep the critters alive, and it ended up doing more harm than good. Go ahead.
Well, basically, what the problem with that is that they had a larger incentive to cut down the trees and take part in the preemptive actions than they had to not, because if they did it, they didn't face like as bad of a consequence as they would if they kept it, because if they keep it, the consequence is that's money out of their pocket, whereas if they cut it down, they don't get as harsh of a consequence.
Yeah, it's like the whole
Exactly.
problem with like both of these systems is like a misplacement of incentives. Because your incentive is always, you always want to make the most money. So if you have to cut down the trees before the woodpecker comes in, your incentive is to get these trees, even though you know it's bad for the environment or bad for whatever. Because if you wait for the woodpecker to come in, there's no alternative for you to make money. That is completely taken away from you. So like you go and catch the fish you need to catch or cut the trees you need to cut and you need to make your money.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, so that's how that went. And so something had to give, so they created this such thing called a catch share system. And this combined two things, and basically it had a total allowable catch that you could, like a size and all that was determined. And then your fishermen that went out and actually did the actual fishing, they all were assigned a certain amount that they could fish. And in these shares, they were often called
individual transferable quotas.
Yeah, individual transfer quotas, or ITQ for short. And there was a rhyme and reason to it, but it kind of was like, well, sometimes people who had been in the field or longer, they got more of these like shares than people just coming in. And basically what these things gave was they gave people some property rights. Amen with the property rights. They get and because people now had property rights, there was some sense of ownership, and plus they had a cap. So not only were they technically owned some fish now, but if they went over this, they was going to get in all kinds of trouble, and they didn't want to do that. But these shares, these ITQs, could be, you could give them to somebody else, you could sell them, you could do whatever the world you wanted to them. They were yours. And they gave, and like I was saying, they gave fishermen enforceable rights to the fish they hunted, as though they were their actual like gear. Like if somebody walked up and stole their fish or something like this, they had just as much right to go after them for that as they would if they stole their boat. I mean, that's just how it was. And this was put in, and it worked. It's did I put that in there? Yeah, I did. It worked. It started when this system got put in, the fishery started picking back up, and like examples of this would be Alaska and the British Columbia and Iceland. I mean, and ever since the big collapse, and ever since they put this in 1970, the incidences of fishery collapses have been cut down by like 2/3, and that's a lot. So it really has been working, and
yeah, if you look at the places where it's been implemented, like Alaska, Iceland, is places where a huge amount of their industry like relies on fishing, because there's not a lot of arable land. You can't grow crops or raise cattle or anything, so once you overfish your fisheries, that could lead to like a total collapse of your society. So they put in these systems because it was a last resort, and it ended up completely reversing the problem.
okay. But can anybody kind of hit on why it might have started working so good? Like, what was it about this new system that started working so good?
I think it took into account how the TAC, the total amount that you can safely harvest, is the key to it, because it takes into account not just what you're fishing, but what everyone is fishing, how much everyone is fishing, and keeping control of that.
That, and it gave incentives to smaller fishing companies and smaller groups of people fishing, because it would let them go out and catch a decent amount of fish instead of giving it all to the bigger companies that could go out and catch as many fish as they need.
Yeah, like speaking of the total allowable catch, I think that's one of the biggest differences between this system and the old one, because with command and control, the government put in place like a limit on the amount of fish you can catch. It didn't really allow for how many fishermen were out there, how many companies or boats. Mm-hmm. It's just you get a limit, and once you catch that many fish, you should stop. And then most of the time people didn't, and then as many people that wanted to could come in and catch these fish.
And usually there's research done to like I know in Canada that this is how their hunting permits are run, and so scientists go out every year and like do like this estimate of like how many deer are there this year. Has there been a disease that's knocked out the deer population? Well, then we can't hunt as many this year, you know, and you know, so each year it changes according to the environment.
I think it worked because I think of the ITQs in terms of like shareholders, and by the government like putting that in place, it puts a cap per se on the amount of shareholders in the market, so you don't just have people randomly coming in and being a part of this market. And so when you put a cap on it, then that reduces the amount of people who are in.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because then you get a closed system.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like in that other article, they talked about the catch-share system and their fishery and how it helped. It was specifically oh my gosh, which fishery was it? It was a British one. Yeah, it was British Columbia one. They was talking about how they tried the so-called property rights and everything, and it worked, and it picked up their system and made it started working again. And like we've all been hitting on, the reason it worked so good was because people now had incentive to protect their claim, so to speak. And what was it we've talked about every so often? The moral the moral incentives and all. Well, and the reason I'm hitting on that is because, well, before their moral incentives were kind of shy, because anybody could hunt these fish and there was no particular set system or rhyme or reason to it. You go out there, you catch all the fish catch all the fish you could, and if you knocked out a good portion of the population, oh well, people didn't care as much because there was no sort of that they didn't realize. I think they didn't realize just how bad it had gotten until it was too late to fix it, or almost too late to fix it.
Yeah, this way it's not just
people don't care about it because what?
Because there was there was a sense they were getting their profit, so as long as they were making money, they didn't care if they ended up wiping out the species.
Okay. So yeah, they are making profit, but at the same time,
there's no existence value for the fish, like the codfish, because no one really cares about North Atlantic cod.
Mm-hmm. That's right. And also there's no punishment. There's no consequence for their action, for their abusing the fishery. There is no consequence. That is the reason why they catch as many as possible.
And that's like, if you go out, back in Tallahassee, I have it's like a little short drive, and it's the Gulf of Mexico. And it's warm water, so there's a lot of fish. So if you go out for, 4 to 6 hours and then come back in, they don't really have, like, the game wardens kind of, like, you could very much so catch as many fish as you want and come back in. But because that they put these things into place, not only does it kind of scare everyone, like, all right, I gotta be careful about how much fish I catch, but also at the same time, it's making sure that you don't go out and catch a ton of fish because you need to conserve it not just for yourself and for your own benefit, but for the public. So it's just, I guess, that first-hand account, and you see that the fisheries are definitely decreasing.
Yeah, and also it punishes like the people who buy the fish as well. So if you go and sell your fish and you have so many more fish than your like ITQ allows you, then the people who are buying them from you, like they can't sell them back like to a company or as food, because if they get caught, like, because you don't have to have the government coming and finding you on your boat. You have your like spreadsheets and numbers. You can't hide all the fish you bought. So if you're buying too many fish from one person, like you're gonna get fined and punished for that.
Okay. You can go.
I'll just change it. I think that it also, there's like a sense of hopelessness. I'm more familiar with hunting than I am with fisheries, but I know like down here they don't have very good deer management, and so I mean I know a lot of people who would love to see good deer management, but there's just this feeling like, you know, me not hunting this year is not going to change the whole management. You know, I still want to hunt, I still want to get that enjoyment or whatever motive they have for hunting, and me not hunting, you know, it's not going to change the overall effect.
Yeah, I'm pretty familiar with hunting as well, and one of the things is people don't really listen to numbers, because you can go driving outside at night and almost hit 3 deer. So when people tell you that like deer populations are dwindling, you just want to think like, no, they're not. There are deer everywhere.
Yeah, and if you have a small amount of land, then you can't see the deer population because the deer move around a lot, and like there's no chance at management because it's just, you know, your property is just a small area, like the deer pass through. You can't make a difference. I know people with big ranches can practice good deer management and not, you know, decide not to kill the small buck, you know, but people with small land, that buck's just gonna go to someone else who's gonna shoot it, so might as well shoot it.
Like it's on my land, I don't know when I'm gonna see another one.
Yeah.
In economics, there is a term for what you guys saying. It's called the drop of the bucket problem. Okay, so that explains insufficient supply of the contribution to the public good. Okay, let's say, you know, I put a jar here. I said, you know, I'm going to, you know, collect the money to install an air conditioner, which costs $3,000. Okay, and people think, oh, I can put $1 or $2. It's not going to make a difference, so I'm not going to do it. Okay, so that's exactly this is called the drop of the bucket problem, because you think your contribution or your action is insignificant compared to what needs to be done, and people just don't do it. So it ends with insufficient supply, and that is a market failure. That is a problem in the market.
So all this we've been talking about, it all ties back into the fact to now with these catch snare systems, people, now that they have a limit on how many that they fish or whatever that they can hunt, there's more incentive to take care of what fish that they have, and so now they'd be more willing to let like smaller fish or so go because they have to maximize their profits or whatever when they're in the grand scheme of things. And if you get a bunch of little fish, they used to have to put a tag on them just as much as you would bigger fish, so people were more inclined to wait for the bigger fish than to get the little fish. So that the little fish are allowed to grow up and reproduce and make more fish.
Yeah, because more than likely, most of these fish are gonna stay like in your area, like in your fishery, because that's where they live and migrate. So everyone is taking apart from this one gathering of fish. So if you catch them all as small, you get the small fish. But if you leave them until they're large, they'll all grow, and then everyone gets the bigger fish.
Okay, what is this?
A blue whale.
Yay, it's a blue whale. And once a great while ago, there was a whole lot of blue whales. There was between 300,000 and 1 million. I mean, they used to be a lot of whales. But then, because of hunting, like heavy hunting, they got dropped. The population dropped off to basically non-existent.
Yeah. Do we know like why people hunted whales? Yeah, there used to be a thriving industry for like whale blubber. We use this as like candles, tallow, like all kinds of things. And especially now we're seeing it as a lot of like kind of like trophy hunting. You also see it in like sharks for their fins and different kind of animals. You see this like all throughout nature, rhinos, whales. It's becoming a huge problem. It's something we need to manage.
Yeah. So they realized that we were running out of whales in the world, so they did something about it. We all got together and we created this treaty that banned all hunting on blue whales. But even though there technically is a treaty that bans it, there are some countries that still do it, like randomly, like every so often they'll go out and kill one, and these are places like Brazil, China, not China, Chile and Peru. But they still go out and hunt, which it kind of defeats the purpose of the ban. If they are still going out and hunting, but at least it isn't as much as it used to be. I reckon you if you want to look at the bright side. And they were saying that could a catch-snare system works with this. In theory, yes, it probably would work, but it would be very hard. Like, it'd be really hard to manage this kind of a system for the whales. One big thing is because of it's really expensive. Because whales don't just stay in this one little area. If this whole room was the ocean, they're not going to stay in this one little square. They're going to go over here and over there and around there. I mean, they cover thousands upon hundreds of thousands of miles in their lifetime. And there's just simply, that's really hard to try to keep a track on all these whales, to try to keep that particular problem from trying to keep them a sense of where all the whales are going. And also, because they're so few and far between, it'd be really difficult to set a sort of a TAC for them. It's because they're so few anyway that even if they weren't so few, they wouldn't so spread out. It'd be really hard to put a limit on them because the whales we have left, we need to make more whales because it takes a long time for whales to reproduce. So it'd be very difficult to try to get some sort of system set up for that. And also, another reason is whales are so-called charismatic. I can't pronounce these words to save my life.
They have existence value.
Yeah, that basically we as human beings get a sense of pleasure, or that we get something out of them just being out there swimming. As long as we know they're out there swimming, that's all we care about. And they can go out there and they can swim all they like. It's just we got to know they're out there. They've got a sense of value. That's what they're good for. And like we were saying, because of the fact they're so, a catch-snare system, if we did put one in place, in theory would work, but is it really in reality, is it a good idea? Probably not.
Yeah, I was confused about this because at the end of the chapter, it kind of said, we think this would be a good idea and we think it would work. But they didn't really explain, for me, the not being able to set an accurate TAC is like an insurmountable problem. If you can't judge how many whales are out there and how many are safe to hunt, then you could set it for too many and, obliterate them. Like, you have to know how many would be a safe amount to hunt.
At the same time, I think it might be able to work if you just set it very conservatively.
Yeah.
And give a number of whales that is just absolutely minute, but just give people the chance to hunt them instead of making it outright illegal.
Yeah, like she said, very, very minute, within, still in, maybe 10 or 20, tops, a year. That's probably being on the higher end of the minute scale, but,
So
I mean,
would
just
that would that be restricting the current hunting, or would that be like expanding? Because right now there's a ban, right?
Well, like it said it was talked about in the book that some cultures still do some sporadic hunting. I'm not entirely sure what the meaning behind sporadic, if that meant they go out every so often and kill 1 or 2, or they could kill 10 or 20. I mean, that's just, it depends on their idea of sporadic.
Well, I know, like, in the Arctic, people, like, the Inuit people get together and hunt narwhals, like, maybe once every few months. And there are very few communities up there in the first place because they need the vitamin C in their skin. So you can ban the hunting of whales, but there are still people and cultures that are going to do it. Because, like, in that situation, they need them.
So the catch-share system would be regulating that.
It would be allowing these cultures to still function, because right now we need a ban on hunting, because if you don't have one, everyone's going to do it, and that causes the population to collapse.
Okay.
That, and whenever you have a total ban on something, it makes a black market for it. So if you raise that just a little bit so that they can hunt it, it won't be such a stress.
Yeah, prohibition doesn't work, guys.
Yeah.
You regulate.
Cities, the item that is traded in black market will be shifted. Some of them will be shifted to the regular market. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, what is this?
It's
a bison! Yay, bisons! And bisons once, as we've all heard the story 100 times in a history class, there once was everywhere. You couldn't throw a stone without hitting a bison, and now there is, like, the population has been dwindled down to like nothing. And it all was originated back 100 years ago when they was roaming the area. Bison couldn't be tamed. They could not be corralled. And because there was no way to get anything out of them, because there was no incentive, they couldn't, there was no, would that be direct, there was no direct profit or benefit to keeping them alive. And they were, because of the fact they couldn't be corralled or tamed, if you tried, they'd tear up your farmlands and they'd tear up your fences and whatnot. Go ahead.
The first extermination of the bison actually started as like an intentional way to force some of the Plains nations in like the area. They were trying to force them into debt so that they would move on to reservations. So that was like the first extermination of the bison. And then they were also getting in the way of the railroads. So in like a way, yeah, like they were in the way of like settlement and everything, but they were actually exterminated in the beginning as a way of making the Indians' way of life like not possible. So that they would have to be dependent on the U.S. government.
Oh, cool. Well, that particular part I didn't hear. I knew about the railroads, but I didn't hear about the part. Yay, I learned something new today. But yeah, but like she's saying, I mean, at first it was intentional, and then they started getting in the way, and then they started tearing up stuff. And so in the end, all of that chaos, a bullet was cheaper. And then, like I said, they realized, oh my goodness, we're running out of bison. So there came a time where people actually started eating these bison. Like they found out that they were actually good to eat. So, what? People, okay, let me rephrase that situation then. People started realizing that if we're going to keep on eating these bison, we've got to have some sort of management, or we're going to be losing our bison and we can't eat them no more. So, what they did, now there are certain people who own large areas of land and they keep bison on them. And the Ted Turner, who happens to be the founder of CNN, that's just a fun fact, he owns the biggest population of like bison on his particular piece of land. He owns the biggest population, which is 55,000, which in all around in North America, there's about 400 like total like head of stock that are managed by different people. And because but they're not doing this. They're not raising these bison out of the goodness of their heart. They're raising them to kill them and eat them. But because there's actually places you go out and eat these bisons and places, there's an incentive to keep them alive. And in the process of actually raising them up where you can kill them and eat them, and we keep a large enough number alive so we can continue to kill them and eat them, we actually end up keeping the species altogether alive, because all of that collective chaos, you actually end up keeping strong gene pools together to get good quality meat, and they manage the ground so they have enough to eat and all this other good stuff. So it ended up inadvertently we ended up actually saving the species by killing them, if that makes sense.
This is kind of like what people are trying to do with fish farms.
Yeah. I want you guys start. I want you guys start asking questions because I want to give them grade. A lot of them have not spoken yet.
All right.
So we're running time.
Shine! It's getting late. I didn't realize it was that late. Okay. So the discussing questions. Has there ever been a problem with extinction of dogs, cats, or cattle, and why not?
Well, dogs and cats, there's actually like the opposite of an extinction problem. There's like an overpopulation at this very moment. But like traditionally, dogs and cats, and I mean even cattle, are kind of seen as like a part of a way of life. So, I mean, settlers, like everyone as far as history, and cows have been there. Like they've used cattle for, I mean, like their manure is fertilizer. They have like milk. You can make cheese and all of that from it. So like you can use them for meat. And I mean, there's just like so much of an incentive to raise the cattle, kind of like the buffalo.
You can think of an existence value.
Okay.
Cattle, they're like, people wait till they're fully grown to use them for food instead of killing them when they're young, like fish.
Dogs and cats are like have grown up with people, and a lot of times they're taken care of in homes and stuff. And even with cattle, like they're taken care of. They live on farms, so people take care of them. And most animals have to live on their own. But I think that's why they are living longer.
A lot of people breed like dogs and cats and cattle and stuff, and so you wouldn't have an extinction because they are like trying to breed them and stuff, so they're trying to grow them. So you don't really breed fish.
Also, like you were saying with the fish, how like when you catch a fish, you kind of like you kill it. You don't like they can't. I guess you could, but like when you get a dog or cattle or whatever, you don't have to kill them to own them. So like you can own one and then breed them, like she was saying.
My dad's coworker is Vietnamese, and he said that when he was growing up, there were no stray dogs, and like I don't know if dogs were to a point of extinction in Vietnam, but he said they're very rare because they were viewed as like a food, and so if you saw a stray dog, you would catch it and eat it, and that's kind of like horrible to our American ears, but they apparently like this. Yeah.
There's just a little anecdote, but in Ukraine, like you never buy a skinned rabbit because there's about a 50% chance it's a cat.
Yeah, I mean, I knew there were some cultures out there that actually do eat these critters that we keep as pets over here, and that's just how their culture works.
Yeah, and there's a demand for them, so there's no extra supply of dogs in Vietnam.
Yeah, building on that, we have a moral incentive here to like keep them because we see them as pets. Like we name them, but we don't name the ants that we see crawling on the floor. We just kind of kill it. We don't think about going out and killing dogs and cats.
Like what Olivia said about the breeding thing, like with hogs, it could kind of be like cattle, but I mean, you kill lots of hogs every year for meat, but you still have lots of hogs because there's an incentive to like keep having more of them. So people have to keep some animals to breed out more animals, so that it's not like with fish how you could just kill them and not worry about it.
And I mean, dogs, cats, and cattle, I think the word we were all kind of looking for was they're domestic. You know, they're house pets. Like, you're not gonna go kill Mr. Snuffles because that's just not what you do. Like, I mean, basically, it's not a problem for us because it's like we love these animals. I guess like kids get attached to them, like all this stuff, and you know when they die, it's like sad. It's like part of the family. So this isn't a species that we have to worry about.
Yeah, fish don't have feelings.
And even that, like, in the US, like, we've criminalized hurting our domesticated pets. Like, I know, like, when those commercials come on for the dogs and the cats, that touches me some type of way more than anything else. So we've morally, like, we've said, like, it's wrong, but also criminally, like, we don't have any tolerance for it.
Yeah. So I kind of branching off of what you've all said. My personal beliefs on the matter is like we've been touching on. We have an incentive to keep them alive, rather it be to kill them and eat them in some cultures, or keep them as pets in others. We have a need for them. There is a market for them, and because they're tameable and whatnot, they're manageable. So rather if you're going to kill them and eat them, or you're going to keep them as the pet and name them and they're going to be part of your family, you have a reason to keep them alive. So therefore, there wouldn't be a reason for these particular creatures to kind of drop off the face of the earth, because we got more incentive to keep them alive than they'd be dead.
Yeah, the fish manage themselves and they are our responsibility. So we take from them instead of taking care of them.
All right. It says in the U.S., most fishing streams are public property, which access is available to everybody. In Britain, most fishing streams are privately owned with access restricted to those who are willing to pay for the right to fish. Anglers agree all over the past 30 years, the quality of fishing in the U.S. has declined, while the quality of fishing in Britain has risen. Why is this possible? Go ahead.
In Britain, if they're paying for it, they can use that money to stock the streams. So as they're being taken from, but they're also being replenished. And in the U.S., it's open. Nobody really feels the need to.
So what does this question say about ownership?
Wait, are you asking me?
No, not asking.
No. Okay. Hey, go ahead.
I was going to say because possibly in the U.S., maybe people aren't as interested in fishing and actually having to pay to fish. Because me personally, I wouldn't be interested in paying to fish.
Okay. Go ahead. Go ahead.
All right. So the thing with ownership is, if something's yours, you take care of it. If a land's yours, you're gonna make sure there's no pollution in the water that's killing the fish or decreasing the size or whatever. So that's sorry, I stole your guys' thunder. But that's kind of what it is. Is like, if it's yours, you take care of it.
I think a lot of times that going along with ownership, these are privately owned catch share systems a lot of times, where the owner says, I know how much it's too much fishing, and so yes, you can come in, but then the next day we've had many people fishing here, so no one. So they're exercising their ownership and
that actually is a good thought. I didn't think about that. That actually is good. Go ahead.
Going along with that, they're not gonna go for like the little small fish. They're gonna wait and let them grow, and then give them time and get the big fish.
It's kind of like an analogy where if you look at public transportation, it's not as high class as driving in your own car that you bought. It's not as nice. Whereas if you buy it, you're going to take care of it and make sure that it's how you want it.
It also stops people from like just fishing to fish. I mean, normally when you pay for something, you're doing it for a good reason. You're not just doing it for fun. It's kind of like when people hunt and they don't save the meat. I think that's kind of stupid. So like whenever you're paying for it, you're probably saving the meat or doing something with it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. All right, go ahead.
You can also inform people when they pay to fish. I know in Canada, you buy a permit, you can fish, and you can only catch a certain amount, and then they'll tell you, you need to catch, it needs to be above this, bigger than this measurement and smaller than this measurement, because that's a good time to catch the fish where they, they're not too small that they haven't reproduced already, or whatever management techniques they're using. So it's kind of, a lot of people don't know about good management techniques. They're just, oh, let's catch some fish. So it's a good way to inform people and enforce rules that they wouldn't have known about.
Alrighty. So to bring that all together, in a nutshell, basically we all agree on the sense of, well, if something's yours, you're going to take care of it. So the fact that these places are owned by somebody and are maintained by somebody, that will automatically, to an extent, increase the quality of fish you would get out of there because somebody's taking care of it, versus in the U.S., nobody's taking care of it but Mother Nature. So if something gets in the water or something, nobody goes in there and cleans it up, or if you fish out or if people go in there and fish out the area, I mean, there's nobody there to replenish it or make sure that doesn't happen. And also, because in these system people manage it, because they manage it in different ways, rather you pay by fish or by hour or by pound. Some places pay by pound. People will have, depending on these situations, people will have more incentives to get bigger fish and for the fish that they are allowed to, for the fish they are allowed to get and they have to pay for, they have greater incentive to throw the little fish back and and wait for a big fish to come, because you have to pay for it. You don't want to pay, if it's a pay by fish, you don't want to pay $20 for a fish this big when you can wait and pay $20 for a fish this big. You get what I'm saying?
Okay, so this one's talking about aquaculture, which is
How many more questions do you guys have?
I think that's, wait a minute. Yeah, we have one more after this.
Okay.
Right.
Guys, I don't want to talk about that first article.
The first article?
Okay,
Okay, do you want us to, you want, okay, you just want this one to be it, or you just want to cut it off right now?
I mean, it's up to you, but I want you to, go to the article,
It's
you
okay,
have
we can wrap
14
it up.
minutes left. 14 minutes, so yeah.
We'll do one
I
more
got you.
then, and then we'll cut it off. Okay.
Like aquaculture is the business of raising water-dwelling animals like fish, mollusks, oysters, shellfish, shrimp, whatever kind of marine life. And for fish, that means raising them in large net pens. So is there a problem with overfishing with something like aquaculture? And what's the difference between like aquacultural animals and wild animals?
I don't think they have a big problem with overfishing with aquaculture, because whenever you can see how much you have left, you won't go off and fish every one of them out. Whereas in the wild, you can't really see the big picture, as we were talking earlier with the deer. You can't see how many are left.
You have them like right there in front of you.
I really haven't nailed that, but I know especially in Alaska they do a lot of salmon farming, and they harvest every part of the animal. They humanely kill them, which is they use electric shock, and they kill them. They harvest everything. They harvest the roe, which are the eggs and the sperm, and they actually can fertilize those, or they can just sell them as is in order to reproduce. And so they're using every bit of the fish, and they make sure that they don't use them in the sense that they're using too many, because they have a set number, and so they know exactly how many they can kill per day.
Yeah, so it makes
per time.
fishing like farming. Yeah, you grow what you want and then you harvest it. Good.
I was thinking that it's sort of like when you have a farm and you're raising the animals, you're actually raising these fish. You're not like just out and these fish were already there and you're taking them. You raise them yourself like you raised a cow, and then you're killing it still.
Alrighty. Take it away.
What's the title of the first article?
It's it's called The Problem of Social Cost. You guys want to talk about that? Problem of social cost? First article? Anybody read that or skimmed through that one?
Yeah,
I have them all, but like
I got. They were talking about those. Yeah, I got it. It's right there. The one of the things they talked about was the idea behind the cattle raisers and the people who grew crops. there was a
So
sense.
Can you just tell the story? I mean, that example to everybody because not everybody read that.
Yeah,
you know?
I tell it to everybody. See what they had was there was a situation where these cows, they would wander into these crop farmers thing and like destroy their crops. And they described a situation where they were trying to put a cost on this because the cow farmers had to pay would have had to pay for the damages that their cows cost. So I think they used an example of like $1 per pound.
Yeah. So basically, you have a neighbors, two people, okay, and one is cattle raisers, and the other one is farmers. Okay, the cattle sometimes and go to the side of the neighbor to eat the crops. Basically, that's the story. Okay, and then in the article they discuss two scenarios, right? The first scenario is when the cattle raisers is not obligated to pay for the damage. That's the first scenario. And the second scenario is, the first scenario is obligated to pay. And the second scenario is cattle raisers is not obligated to pay for the damage that made by the cattle. So the article basically talk about what's the solution there. Okay, do we need a third-party intervention in order to solve this problem? So basically, if the cattle raisers is obligated to pay for the damage, how much should they pay? Okay, and if the cattle raiser is not obligated, how much one side is should pay to the other to resolve this? And is there any difference between these two scenarios in terms of the payment? Okay, so that's the kind of you want to say something, Carly?
Well, I mean, wouldn't it be like a shared responsible thing? Because cattle farmers are supposed to have like fences, but people who grow crops also have to take the measures.
They talk about the fences, building fences, requires the money, so it's about $9, remember. But I'm going to switch away from this. Okay, I'm now, not finished yet here. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to tell you another story. Okay, and I want you to use this story to think about the solution of this one. Okay, so basically this article and all these chapters talk about externality. Okay, overfishing causes externality, right? Okay, and these cattle go to the neighbor's farm and damage farms. That's the externality. Okay, so now I'm going to tell you another externality. Okay, you all live in dorm, right? Let's say you have a neighbor. Your neighbor is John. He likes to play loud music. Okay, it really disrupts your study. Okay, but you know what? He's not obligated to turn it down for you. Okay, let's say the supervisor really turned a blind eye, closed their eyes on it. So this situation really bothers you. So what you decide to do is you decide to hang out with this guy. So every weekend, you call him, let's go out to Buffalo Chicken Wings. I'm going to buy you a beer, and I'm going to buy you, 6 wings. So you start doing that. You start hanging out. Guess what? After 2 months, you guys become buddies. And John feel, oh, he's my friend. Blaine is my friend. I feel obligated to turn down for him. Okay? So eventually the music was turned down and you're happy. So what does this story tell you? This story tells you, yes, in this situation, we have negative externality problem, okay? But we don't need a third-party intervention to solve this. Because what? What Blaine's doing to the John instead of paying him to turn down the music. Okay, he start hanging out with John, so John feel obligated. So you pay this, you buy him beer, buy him chicken wing. So in economic sense, you're paying him to turn down the music. So there is a cost. Okay, so So what this story tells you actually is what this paper tells you. It's a very famous economic theorem. It's called Cowles theorem. Cowles theorem says that in a market where there's an active externality, there will be issues. Market may fail, but sometimes we may have a solution if two parties can participate in the negotiation. So, when Blaine take him out to buy him beer and buy him chicken wings, you're not thinking about negotiation in a formal sense, but it is negotiation, okay? And there is a price in there, okay? So you're paying him. So what Cowles theorem says this, okay? Don't get panic if there is a market with externality, because negotiation or renegotiation may make this disappear, but somebody's going to pay for it. Okay, so in this article here, okay, when the cattle raisers is obligated to pay to the farmers, the cattle raisers is going to pay for the damage. Okay, but in the second scenario, the cattle raisers is not obligated to pay. So exactly like the story I tell you, the John is not obligated to pay for the noise they make. But eventually this problem solved. But this time, who is paying whom? The farmers is paying the cattle raisers. So in the first scenario, cattle raisers is paying for the farmers. The second scenario, farmers is paying the cattle raisers. But the price are exactly the same. So if you look at this issue from the whole society point of view, from this, you consider these two, cattle raisers and the farmers, the whole family. If you look at it from the whole family point of view, nothing is lost. Okay, the damage is taken care of. The payment is just transferred from one party to another. So even though the system in the first scenario is different from the second scenario, but the difference lies on who transfers the payment to whom. But from the whole society point of view, nothing is changed. But the problem is solved through the negotiation. So that's the essence of the Cowles theorem. Actually, that's the essence of the article. It tells you that sometimes we don't need third-party intervention. Market can take care of that. Through the negotiation, through the renegotiation. So every time sometimes people call it bribing, but actually it's a price system, it is a negotiation in an informal sense. So that's what the article. That article is hard, but that's go ahead.
You just said that it's equal like both ways in society, but wouldn't the cattle raisers win both ways? Being how they didn't have to pay in one scenario and they were getting paid in the other one for the problems that the cattle had caused. Okay,
so I know what you're talking about. So when we look at from society point of view, from social welfare, okay, guys, do not pack the bag. Every time you pack the bag, it makes me very panic, okay? Okay, so when we look at the social welfare, we look at the whole society. We don't look at the individual's gain. We don't like Blaine's gain. We don't look at John's gain. We look at the sum of everyone's gain. Okay? So if we look at cattle raiser and this farmer, what's this whole society's problem? The problem is damage on the farm. As long as that problem is solved, is alleviated, then the whole society gains. You see? So that's the point. Yes, in the first scenario, cattle raisers wins because they get more money. In the second scenario, in the first scenario, cattle raisers pay the money. In the second scenario, farmers pay the money. So in the first scenario, farmers gain. In the second scenario, cattle raisers gain. But from the whole society point of view, nothing is lost, nothing is gained. But the problem solved. So as a policymaker, as the government, planner, what they look at it is the sum. Okay, they look at the situation and say, okay, if I do not inject some policy, if I do not implement anything, will that problem resolve among the parties themselves? I mean, sometimes it's kind of cold because they really don't care who gains, who loses, because all they care about is the sum.
Okay, but you know what this article talks about is market will deliver that solution, even the third party does not intervene. Okay, so that's what the famous theorem, Cauchy theorem. So do you guys get that?
Yeah.
I get, yeah. And in the book, or not in the book, in the article, I focus more on the third party intervention.
Yeah. So.
Because the third party intervention, it was when like the two parties don't negotiate
That's right.
Who intervenes, and that was just the court.
Yeah, for example, that the noise example, that say, you know, he has been taking him out for 6 months, he spent like $100 on him, but he is just the kind of person just ignore that, he still has his, you know, music on, so what are you gonna do? You're gonna go to the supervisor 1 time, 2 times, 3rd time, until the supervisor intervenes. So sometimes market does not deliver solution, then you have to rely on the third party. Yeah. Okay. Good job. Okay. Okay, so next week we're going to go into the chapter of globalization. And Kayla? Not Kayla. Kaylin and Elizabeth going to do that chapter. Also on Thursday, I will be in the conference, so you're going to watch a video on globalization. Okay? And the next week, I'm going to determine, you know, what's good. So those 5 people, I want you to, you're not